Arab oil-producing countries also felt that the West was getting a free ride.
The entire demand and the expectation in the West of cheap energy, it fueled industrial civilization. The West took this availability of cheap supplies as its own birthright. It was going to be there. The Arabs and the Iranians, as the lingo of the time had it, had no choice. They couldn't drink it. They had to sell it. This was the expectation, that these people would sell at our prices, that there would be no consequences for the prosperity and for the autonomy and the independence of the West.
When Sir Peter Walters became BP's chairman, it was still half owned by the British government, and oil companies were the focus of rising nationalism.
Morning, Arthur. How are you?
Under the old concession system, BP owned its oil outright.
The old concessional system and equity crude was really what BP was all about until perhaps the mid-60s, early 70s, when life changed. But BP was based on Iran and Iraq and Kuwait, and the whole system of being probably the best in the world at finding crude, and a company whose fortunes were totally dependent on that old system.
Much of BP's oil came from the small city-state of Kuwait. Located at the head of the Persian Gulf, it sits on 10% of the world's oil supplies. For many years, the driving force behind Kuwait's emerging oil industry was Sheikh Ali Khalifa Al Sabah, a member of Kuwait's royal family.
Kuwait was a poor country in a very poor region. To a certain degree, we were better than some of the countries around us in terms of being able to engage in trade and pearl fishing.
For years, pearl fishing kept the Kuwaiti economy afloat. And then, when the Japanese developed cultured pearls at the end of the 1920s, Kuwait's economy was devastated. Oil transformed Kuwait. In 1938, BP and the American company Gulf struck oil. Kuwait's wealth began to build up, but so did its resentment of foreign companies.
My generation was, if you grew up in the Middle East in the 50s and the 60s, the oil companies were monstrous bloodsuckers. Get rid of them, and a brand new world shall be created in the region. The cartel, the Seven Sisters, they had the magic, they had the power, they had the force. And so there was this tremendous sense of these overbearing, powerful entities. People feeling at the mercy of these companies.
Gulf and BP had invested treasure and emotions for decades in Kuwait. We thought of ourselves and the Kuwaitis together building something that was important to both of us, and we thought that we were part of that team, we were part of that family. It was a great disappointment, and it was a shock, really an emotional shock to realize that they didn't think of it as family at all. They thought they had been exploited.
The activities of Western oil companies meant a large expatriate community. Too often, they made Kuwaitis feel like foreigners in their own country.
The attitude of the foreign oil companies, especially a company like British Petroleum, was to treat the nationals as something below their own nationals. You may not believe it, but as late as 1959, the Habara Club, which is a senior staff club in Ahmadi, the Kuwaiti engineers were not allowed to become members.
It took the personal intervention of the man who is today the Emir of Kuwait to end the club's discrimination against Kuwaitis. But the resentment lingered on.
It didn't seem to us, I think, that we necessarily were doing the wrong thing. But looking back, one realizes more and more, I think, what the seeds of nationalism were leading to.
People felt that important decisions affecting their own life and their own country was being made in London or Pittsburgh. This they did not accept and wanted these decisions, for good or for bad, to be taken by themselves under their own political system.